Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Alundra. I've rewound a bit to the start of the Reptilicus Maximus fight because as it turns out, and I'd failed to do this in the previous episode, this is actually a great place to show off the power of the water magic. Because the Reptilicus himself is one of the only enemies that you can hit all 3 times with the icicles that surround you as a defensive shield when you summon the water magic in the first place. So in addition to healing us completely, this is actually a really good magic to use in boss fights where the boss is relatively stationary and doesn't have a lot of projectiles. We hit him 5 times between 2 castings of the water magic. I did save an extra charge for this particular version of the fight, as opposed to blowing it in the 10 Lizardmen fight right before this. But having done so, hitting him 5 times, we bring him almost to the edge of death right there. It only took a few extra slashes with the sword. If I'd hit him the 6th time with an icicle, I think I would have killed him outright. So it sort of illustrates how powerful, ridiculously powerful, magic is in this game overall. A lot of the boss fights in the game, unless they have a mechanic like the Soul Leech that prevents you from simply walking up to them and spamming magic, will in fact be beaten by using up all of our magic charges, recharging with a magic elixir, and then, continuing to repeat until the boss is dead. Pretty straightforward, I would have to say. I'll try to fight some of the bosses honestly, using the melee attacks, just so you can get a good sense for their attack patterns in general. But for this guy, I guess we tried it twice, and that's fine, considering it only took about 30 seconds the second time around. So anyway, now that we've finished that, we finally find out why we came here in the first place. As was probably pretty obvious, this is the 3rd Sage dungeon, and we're actually going to get a crest here, as opposed to the coastal cave where the monkeys had stolen it. I'm guessing that since this cave was already occupied by obvious servants of Melzus, there was no need for the monkeys to steal this one. Jill does make some kind of reference to the end of reality itself, which is a little creepy, but I don't really think it comes up that much in the plot. It's just supposed to make it sound like, you're participating in some great undertaking. There we go. So our rewards for this dungeon are first the Fire Scroll. Just like every other crest dungeon, we get an elemental piece of magic. And the Sapphire Crest. Our second crest really should be our 3rd crest, but, monkeys and all. And we also get yet another health refill. Totally useful. This place is full of health refills. I don't really know why. You can actually head through this dungeon from this direction, but since the way into the boss chamber doesn't open from this direction until you beat the boss, you can't actually proceed backwards. You can't enter this cave previously if you drop down a hole to the left of the actual standard entrance to the dungeon. I'll exit through that ladder up there and show it off in a little bit. Yeah, 8 billion slimes, whatever. Nothing new. We'll pick up this chest, but it contains some more herbs. I think herbs in this game are kind of the equivalent of those chests that you run into in Zelda dungeons that have, 10 rupees that you always find when your wallet is already full. This game obviously has a wallet which is absurdly difficult to fill. Even if you pick up every coin and chest containing coins that you can find in the entire game. So I guess it's the healing items that actually you're likely not to be able to pick up very often. That's enough of these guys. I'm totally sick of fighting these slimes. Let's get out of here. So yeah. Moving back to the overworld, you can see that this entrance is just to the left of the main statue. Slime hole in the ground? Yes. There was a hole here, and it's still there. So, now that we've finished the cave of the Reptilicus Maximus and the Reptile Lair, we have no particular reason to fight in this area anymore, or to deal with these lizardmen. Frankly, I'm completely sick of them from the dungeon itself. Let's skip back to Anoa Village and see if they have any plot waiting for us. And in fact, they do. Right in our face. Here's Jess. Yeah, so I actually think it's really interesting that most of the villagers fall victim to these sleep demons, or whatever you want to call them, while you're away. It really makes you feel like Melzus is waiting for the hero to leave Anoa Village before he enacts his other plans. It does in fact make you feel that, Melzus himself is a real mastermind, and he is really implementing his various plans to take effect where defense in the form of Alundra is at its weakest. So of course, we arrive back at the village when Giles is, effectively on death's door. Notice also that Jess did mention the Magiscar, which will be our next, overworld dungeon. So we get 2 objectives at the price of 1. It's actually pretty generous for the standpoint of this game. Refill our magic elixir. Yeah, the magic elixirs only cost 30 gilder, which is pretty powerful considering what they do. They refill your magic charges, and magic is completely broken in this game. For whatever weird reason, when I went back to save at Jess's house, it didn't let me sleep in the bed. I guess because this is technically a time-sensitive event. Let's go back to Eustal and see what her hint is. I just wanted to show this hint because it's kind of funny. Her clue is, you were asked something by Jess. It's like asking the game for a clue and it just tells you, do what your father says. You can actually pay 15 Gilder for a map, which is also pretty funny to me, because, you know, Giles' house is right next door, so they show you the whole map, and there's be an arrow pointing right next to where you are, saying, go here, you moron. But we have no need to do that, because, again, I have a vague idea where we're going. And by say vague, I mean I actually got briefly lost. That's Wendell's house, because all these freaking houses look exactly the same to me. We're looking for the house with someone outside of it, which is pretty standard way this game tells you that you're supposed to visit a house in the first place. Hello, Maya. Go rain on somebody else's parade. It's a shame that this game does sort of fall prey to standard RPG stereotypes, where you have someone that's supposed to have an identical power set to you, but since the hero is expected to do absolutely everything, Maya can't actually accomplish any objectives for you, so she actually comes across as rather incompetent specifically because we do everything that we would normally expect her to be able to do, assuming that she was exactly as competent as us. Anyway, break this pot just for the visual effect, because you know, Giles is a jerk, or at least he was a jerk to us. But we'll do it for Keisha, because Keisha already lost her boyfriend, so there's no reason for her to lose her brother, too, even though he is kind of a dick. Yeah, let's go ahead. I keep forgetting that you actually have to talk to the guy to actually enter his dream world. Keep expecting it to happen automatically. Anyway, in we go. Much like Klein's dream was the token ice level, Giles' dream is the token organic level, and it's kind of the level that looks the closest to what I would assume it would actually look like if you were walking around inside someone's brain. Kind of looks like gray matter. First thing I want to do is a strict combat challenge. Combat in this level is actually pretty easy. The enemies in general aren't too difficult. There aren't really a lot of unfair puzzles, assuming you know what you're doing. So I didn't really have to use any health pickups over the course of this dungeon. There's basically one new enemy, these guys, which are, I believe they're called golems. They can attack by shooting their arms out at you, and they can also spit little bits of themselves. And after you've hit them enough, they'll explode into 4 little bits like that. The annoying thing is, when they shoot their little pieces of themselves at you, it makes a noise similar to the noise that standard enemies make when they die. So it kind of fools you into thinking that you've already killed something when the enemy has in fact just thrown a bit of himself at you. It just makes for a really noisy battle overall, I suppose. I actually really like the placement of the spiked ball in this battle. It's just obnoxious enough to make you feel like you're constantly running out of the way of it, but not sort of present enough that like it's a real hazard. You know, it's a well-balanced addition to otherwise stock combat with enemies that we've mostly already seen before. 3 guys out of the way, 1 more to go, and there we go, and... Ooh, a chest. Wait, that is not... Yes, this game does in fact have mimics. They're not very hard, but they do look absolutely disgusting, and it is really disturbing when you see one for the first time, and in fact every time you see one. Finishing that room grants us that switch, which opens the block that we saw in the first room of the dungeon. And this is kind of a jerk puzzle. It's hard to see that you can actually move, you know, the lower edge of this room without dealing with the conveyor belt. It makes that jump significantly easier to do it from the bottom of the room, as opposed to the corner in between the 2 conveyor belts. Hitting that switch allows us now to move to this extra room, where all we have to do is basically move these blocks into place and jump across the platforms. We're trying to get to the upper right corner of the room. There are a lot of rooms in this dungeon where you can fall off a pit into another room. A lot of those I'm not going to explore because they mostly just contain herbs. The middle door in the upper wall is actually just the way back if you would happen to fall into the pit. Those 2 chests in the bottom, lower left and lower right, contain herbs. Again, I don't really need to pick up any of them in this particular dungeon because I don't lose a lot of health, so no big deal, all things considered. Save our game, head out. What we want to do, heading to the left doesn't really do anything for us. What we want to do is knock this block over, get the iron flail out, knock this block over into the right pit, and move to the right. Again, we're going to ignore that chest, and there's a switch here in the wall. Pretty obvious. Considering some of the jerk moves this game has pulled on us in the past, I was actually kind of expecting that ledge to collapse on us, but all it does is open this path to the north, where we fight some more ice phantoms. I like these guys. They're easy. They have a nice, simple pattern. They don't get bugged out. They don't get stuck. They don't get glitched. They're just nice to fight. They have a cool gimmick. Go down to 1 charge attack. I like the golems too in general. In general, there's nothing too annoying about this dungeon, which I guess is, you know, bad from a commentary standpoint, but pleasant from a gameplay standpoint. It made this dungeon very easy to play through in 1 sitting. There's 8 switches here. They basically light up in order, and you're supposed to hit them all. I guess the easiest way to do this is to use the hunter's bow if you have that open and remember that it actually exists, which I tend not to do. I believe this is timed, and the puzzle will eventually shut off if you fail to hit the switches, but it didn't really come up for me, and obviously I just hit all the switches manually without really being a big deal. Causes a teleporter to spawn here in the middle, and we can move on to the next room in the dungeon. Those statues will actually close these paths off if you walk in front of them, so you have to walk behind the little faces, and jump into this pit. Nothing much really here for us, except some of these gargoyles, and those chests, yet again, contain 2 more herbs. This game really gives you a whole bunch of herbs. I guess because the Reptilicus Maximus lair was actually relatively difficult from a combat standpoint, and you're very likely to take a lot of damage. So the player probably does need a bit of a breather right now to refill their health items, assuming they weren't like us who just bought more. You know, they're very expensive. So that didn't really yield very much of use for us. Let's go here to the north, get out of the way of these rolling balls. Some Indiana Jones going on here. Pretty easy stuff. And moving up here, I'm not really sure what the clue for this room is. You're supposed to hit these 4 switches in a very specific order, which I'm about to do here, and that gives us access to the crystal on the top, on this top platform, of which we have a very short period of time to get it under these 2 blocks before they fall again. This is the main puzzle mechanic for this dungeon. We're supposed to bring these crystal blocks to a bunch of pedestals, and placing them on the pedestals open up a hole in the ground that we can use to access lower floors of this dungeon and basically probe the depths of Giles' subconscious. This one, of course, just leads to the Gilded Falcon. The Falcon and the Life Vessel are pretty easy to get in this dungeon, which is nice because this is a dream dungeon, meaning both items are permanently missable, so it's good to know that you don't have to expend too much effort finding them. Makes me feel better anyway. Moving over here, now we have access to this crystal, and thankfully, thank God, these crystals are indestructible compared to a lot of the other items you had to use as stepping stones in this game. It will never break, which we can put to use in a lot of places, including that room right there, where I got hit in the head with a spiked ball, and thankfully the crystal did not break. I realize that I have not shown off the fire magic yet, despite picking it up at the end of the last dungeon. I'll show it off in the next boss fight, although it isn't really all that useful. Fire magic in general is actually one of the most powerful and widely used magic over the course of the entire game, so unless a boss is explicitly invulnerable to fire magic, again, you basically have to figure this out by an iterative process by yourself, by just trying the magic out. Unless a boss is immune to fire magic, we'll almost always be using fire magic, you know, to spam the boss to death with said broken magic. Alright, 2 rounds of combat, and there's our crystal. There's actually a bit of a trap in this room. It's hard to figure out, especially since there are 2 holes in the ground, exactly where you want to go. The bottom one leads onto a spiked pit that we don't really want to obviously fall on. What you really want to do is be against the back wall of the next room, but if you hold up when you fall down that pit, you wind up in this room. It's a bit of a trap where you just face off against 2 of these gargoyles and one of those fire phantoms. The phantom itself will die immediately when the 2 gargoyles die. It's basically to penalize the player sort of stupidly for not knowing exactly what was going to happen when you fall off the pit. I don't know. It's lame, I guess. But again, pretty easy, all things considered. Kill those 2 guys and fall down to the room proper. First thing you want to do is break open this brick wall. I think this is actually interesting in general, because this room contains basically nothing but a treasure chest with a Wonder Essence inside. And of course, Wonder Essences, as I pointed out previously, are the best healing items in the entire game. They're actually pretty awesome, and we're going to use one right here to refill the health that I lost during a few of the previous puzzles. It's funny because all the herbs that are scattered around the entire dungeon actually require some effort and some puzzle solving to get to, but the really important stuff like the Falcon, the Wonder Essence, and the Life Vessel we're about to pick up are just sort of sitting out for us to pick up. This room over here contains the 1 Life Vessel. There's a maze here in the stalagmites, but you have plenty of time to get to the end. If you take too long, that little platform underneath the treasure chest will lift up into the air and you have to go back to the start and reset the puzzle. But again, as you can clearly see, we have plenty of time to get to the end and pick up our 24th Life Vessel. So now we've hit both of the major treasures for this dungeon, and there's nothing left to do but explore the rest of it and find Giles. So, let's go do that. Again, I really should be dashing throughout this puzzle, but I'm not entirely certain it's actually faster to do that, considering how much time how much delay there is between Alundra switching directions every time you move while hitting the dash. This is one of those stock puzzles where hitting one switch changes the orientation of each switch next to it, but it's a 4x4 grid with all the switches set to off, so it's easy to solve, as I just showed. More combat, hooray! Again, simply because there isn't anything too unfair, I actually really enjoy the combat in this level. I think the pacing overall is really nice. Breaks things up between the puzzles, the action segments. I guess it also helps that there isn't a lot of really obnoxious platforming like there is in a lot of the other previous levels, except for maybe 1 or 2 rooms, one of which I think we're actually coming up on fairly soon. Yeah, here we go. So moving up here, there's 3 switches we're supposed to hit in fairly short order. The first one of which requires you to find these invisible stairs behind the platform. The second one of which requires you to make that jump, and the third one of which you only have about a split second to actually hit. It would have disappeared almost immediately if I had missed it right there. And then we have to make our way to the next pit. This is one of those puzzles where you have to know a priori explicitly which pit to fall down. Falling down the middle one in there gives you access to this last crystal, which, as I've said before, the crystal is indestructible, so you can use it as a tool to kill these golems. Remember that most thrown items will kill regular enemies in a single hit, so having an indestructible thrown item that does water damage in addition to everything else is actually really useful for combat scenarios like this one. Let's move over here. We should be able to find the pedestal that we can place this last crystal on. There's one teleporter over there we can use on the left that actually leads somewhere interesting. Again, most of the bonus rooms, the optional rooms in this dungeon, just lead to herbs, and frankly, I've had no reason to use herbs, so there's been no reason to explore some of the optional rooms, but this one actually contains stuff that I've not already maxed out on, so let's go take care of that. This room is pretty easy to beat from a combat standpoint. You can just sit on these platforms, and the golems can't really do too much to you. Then, after they've attacked, you can just nail them against the wall and stun lock them like so many other enemies in this game can be defeated. More hits, yeah, they do a decent amount of damage, all things considered, even considering we have the leather armor. But still not too difficult. Opening this chest, we get a gold bar. That was totally worth it for 30 gilder, because, you know, money's really worth something in this game at this point, now that we've bought the 2 life vessels. Let's jump down here, and I believe that's the last crystal platform, but we still have a couple of more rooms left to solve. That's an ominous-looking door up there to the north, so I guess that's where we're supposed to be going. Let's kill these 4 guys, and it will open the door. It's a bit to our left. The door to our left is actually the recharge station for the boss, so to speak, although it isn't really nearly as nice as the regular recharge rooms we get in the save teleporters. Still, these guys are pretty easy to fight in a large open room like this, and those fireballs are fairly easy to dodge because they only go in the cardinal directions. Let's go kill that golem, and we'll move over here to the left. The next enemies, for some weird reason, don't appear yet, so we can't unlock the door to the north. We have to actually go inside this room. We get some pots that usually contain healing items. Yeah, there's a nice 5 health pickup, and one of those herb plants that we can use to refill our herbs and top up our health. Let's go back out here, and now this room is populated, eventually, yeah, there we go, by some more ice phantoms. It's a little weird to have the ice phantoms moving without getting damaged by the little fire shooting thing, but I guess friendly fire is off in this game. Oh, that's nice, we got 2 for 1 right there with that charge attack. Kill that guy, and I believe there's one more room left before we can find Giles. Yeah, bunch of gargoyles. Just hanging out there, no problems, right? Yep, cutscene battle, so to speak. I'm not really sure why they're bothering to show us this, like, activation cutscene. Also, for whatever strange reason, the 2 gargoyles at the top of the screen don't activate. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, combat. 6 gargoyles. Really nothing too impressive, considering we've been fighting these guys for quite a while now. The gargoyles in this level have this weird tendency to get locked on the steps. I don't know if it's an AI thing or just a bug regarding the specific room. Notice that there are 2 gargoyles, one on the lower right and one on the lower left, that are just continually teleporting in and out. They're like telefragged inside the wall or something. I'm not sure what the deal is. Let's go kill this guy. Thankfully, even though they're invulnerable while teleporting, there is a very small window for us to hit them and knock them out of this like little teleport lock they're in right now. So let's take care of that. They're still a huge pain to hit consistently, at least with the charge attack. But since we have the sword now, they still go down pretty quickly, just from basic hits. I think it's, yeah, 3 attacks is enough. That's 2, and 1 more. I said 1 more, come on, it's not that hard, just use the regular sword, there we go. That opens the door and leads us to the last room of the dungeon, so let's, well, I guess we'll save Giles in the next episode of Let's Play Alundra. I don't have enough time left. After we actually enter the room, we'll see you then.